Hello and welcome to Hexton Encountered Sports Edition. Today I'm going to be continuing my series on the creation of Mythic League Baseball, which is a fictional league I'm working on that is going to take place starting in the year 1871 with the formation of the National Association and proceed from there through the 19th century and hopefully into the 20th century, with the ultimate plan being for it to become an online league, most likely in 1901. In the first video, I kind of showed how I set up the league, showed some of the rules and so on and so forth that I set up and my thinking behind some of that stuff. And so in this one, I'm going to talk about kind of setting things up error-wise for players and coaches and things like that. So the game itself, OOTP, comes with a lot of built-in information. It's got its own full database with a file called the world.dat file. And that is fueled by an XML file that actually exists in the OOTP folder that you can actually edit if you're good with XML. And you want to, you can change all kinds of things in there. There are also XML files for things like the player names and various things dealing with the nationalities. And there's in the world file, there's things about the population of various places. You can actually rename countries and create your own fictional places and things like that. It's very powerful, but it also involves a lot of editing and some degree of technical expertise as far as dealing with the XML files, because XML is very straightforward, but it is also fairly rigid in that everything has to be what they call well-formed, in that you need to have opening and closing brackets, very similar to like HTML. It is a markup language. That's what the XML stands for, Extensible Markup Language. I won't dig too far into the technical weeds on this, but just suffice it to say that if you want to, and you do have the ability to do so, you can edit almost everything for your universe from within these XML files and use that to start your league. Now, talking about what we're doing here, if we go to our league settings, okay, and I have set myself up as the commissioner. I have the commissioner's role. I did that when I started the game and created the universe. So here on the league settings and functions, we have a whole bunch of things here, editors and import, export. So this is where we're going to take advantage of some of the customizability that OOTP has built into it. As far as, sports management games that are more text simulator type, format, this game is by far the most customizable I have ever seen. Now, there are other games that obviously you can customize a lot of things, and some of them do it really well, but honestly, nothing comes close to what OOTP gives you in terms of being able to change things and doing it relatively easily. Having said that, you can also hose it up pretty easily too if you don't know what you're doing. But you can do things like export and import player stats. So if you have, maybe an old league that you ran in some other sim for years and years and years, and you want to bring those stats in and apply them to players inside an OOTP universe, you can absolutely do that. I won't get into how we do that because it's not really pertinent for what I'm doing, but it is possible to do things like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to export to MLB rosters. So what I do here typically is it's going to stick it inside the saved games folder anyway. First of all, I want it to be a CSV file because that's what it is. That is a comma delimited file. Basically, it's something that can be read by a text editor or a spreadsheet program such as Excel, which is what I'll use. But if you have, some other thing, Google Sheets, there's plenty of things that can open a CSV file. So I'm going to change that, and I'm actually going to change this to be Mythic rosters, just so that I can tell at a glance what it is. Because at some point I may have sub-leagues, or minor leagues, or feeder leagues, draft leagues, winter leagues, all kinds of stuff, right? International leagues. So I want to be able to keep them separate. So I'm going to hit OK. Now it tells me where it created it. Now I hit OK, and I'm going to go grab this so that you guys can see it. So we're going to go to my G drive, which is where I keep all my stuff here. And inside OOTP 24, we go to saved games, and it's not here. Let me think about, oh, I know why. It's in data, saved games. It's down a level further than I think it is. I make this mistake all the time. So here's our mythic roster. So if I double click this guy, it's going to open an Excel spreadsheet. So if I bring my Excel spreadsheet over here, all right, so not really formatted, right? Because you know in Excel you can expand and contract your columns, move things around, et cetera, right? So any line in here with these two slashes, and if you're familiar with coding in many languages, a double slash indicates it's a comment, right? So when a program parses it, it ignores that stuff. And that's exactly what this is here. So at the top, it tells you your team names and their IDs, because everything is managed by this. Here we have our team IDs. Team 7 is Boston. Okay. Basically, it ignores this, and it tells you that right here. Note, player and team names are purely cosmetic and will not be used when importing rosters. Okay. So it tells you that. So you don't have to worry about, doing anything with this here. It could be anything. It could be blank, and the game will ignore it. What counts is the number. Okay. But I'm not changing players' teams. One thing I am going to do, and I'm going to take all of these nicknames, and I'm going to blow them out because none of them would be appropriate for this era. I like to create my own. I run a league, as I mentioned earlier, called Figment League Baseball. You can check that out on legendsport.com. That is legendsport.com. It's also in the, there's also a lot of content on it inside the OOTP forums. If you go to the Dynasty section of the OOTP forums, there are some threads written by me. There are some written by several other people who participate in the league. If you are interested in taking part in that, it works pretty much the same way this one does, except it is an established league currently in the 1940s. I would always be interested in attracting new blood to that league, and I will actually post the link for that in the description for this video. Okay, so other things that you might notice here, right? Here are our names, okay, and you can change the names. You have the city IDs, okay? This is where it gets a little tricky, because one of the things I don't like about this is that some of these places either did not exist in 1871, or they were a fly speck on the map with 3 people living in it, and unlikely to be providing talent to professional baseball leagues. Okay, so everything else is pretty straightforward. We have our uniform number. They didn't have uniform numbers in the 19th century, but the game basically won't let you avoid having them. Like I could come in here and make all of these 0. Right? So this will set all of Boston's players to uniform number 0. It won't matter. The game's still going to give them numbers. Day of birth, month of birth, year of birth, their nationality. 206 is the United States. Okay, so if you see 206 in the nationality, that is the USA. It'll tell you the nation right next to it, and then you have your city ID. And again, you can look these up. They are in that XML file I mentioned. They are in the world XML file. So you can look them up and see what they are. Oftentimes, I will change these inside of the actual game itself, because you can edit these guys internally inside the game as well. If I were to go back to the game and look for Boston and go to their roster and go to Brian Faulkner here, that's the guy we just looked at, right? You can click the editor and you can change his name. You can change his hometown. Let's say we want him to be from Poughkeepsie, New York, or Poughkeepsie, Arkansas. I didn't know there was such a thing, but there you go. He's from Poughkeepsie, New York now. You can do things with their pictures, like change his beard style. Maybe he wants to look like Wyatt Earp. You know, there are also ways, going back to our setup area, where you can do things with face gen and kind of change the way that beards look, right? So you could show beard settings. And now you have all your beard settings in here, and you can change the percentage. So I'm going to change the percentage to 100% no beards, which overrides everything else in here. Okay. I can also, at the team level, if we go back to the team and we go to settings and go to, I believe it's in here. So this is where you can set your uniforms and so on, right? You can say, turn that off and hit OK. And now if you go back to our roster and we go to Brian Faulkner again, you notice he's clean shaven now. He has no beard because I've turned off the ability for the players to have a beard. So these are the things you can do. So I've changed his city. I can change his name. Let's make him Bob Faulkner. Right? So we now have Bob Faulkner. Now if I were to go back to my Excel spreadsheet, in here he's still Brian Faulkner. He's still from Houston. If I were to import this, it would change him back. Right? So what you do when you run into this kind of situation is you close this and say don't save, and then you can just go back to your league settings, come in here and go export again, and then it's gonna. Sometimes it sticks. I don't know why it didn't there, but if we just do that, now if I go back and open that file again and bring it in, and we see we have Bob Faulkner, and his hometown is now Poughkeepsie, and that is the number for Poughkeepsie. So if I were to go, just to kind of keep continuing the string here, if I were to go to the database folder. So here in OOTP Developments, Baseball 24, Data, Database, these are all the files that populate everything in the system. So here's our names XML. That's where you can change the names. These files have a lot of data in them. Okay, so here's the world default XML. I'm going to actually open it with just regular Notepad. And it's not showing regular Notepad. Here, we'll just use the XML Notepad. All right, so now in here, you can see kind of how things work, right? So here you have continents. Inside the continents, you have the name, well, the ID number, right? And you can see all this over here. If I click on this, you see it highlights each line. Now, this is an XML editor, right? So first continent in the game is continent ID 1. Typically, it's going to start at 1. Sometimes it might start at 0, but usually 1. 1, Africa. This apparently is Korean for Africa. I don't read Korean, so I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that's what that is. The population, the ethnicity ID, the abbreviation, the demographic, the Korean abbreviation, and the Korean demographic, right? And then you can drill down further. You get the nations in Africa. We have Algeria. And then inside Algeria, you can break down your ethnicity percentage, right? Now, they go by ID numbers, so you'd have to actually open up the ethnicities up here to see what the various ethnicities are. So 0 is U.S. Modern. 1 is Hispanic. 2 is Japanese. 3 is Korean, and so et cetera, right? So this kind of viewer, and you can download this. I don't know the link off the top of my head, but you can download this, and then you'll have access to it to kind of explore the tree just how I'm doing. And you can edit it this way too. It's just a little less flexible and friendly than doing it in, something else. This isn't a great editor, but this is a good way to learn, the structure of the file. So if we come in, we look for, let's find, here we go, North America. Okay, so we're in North America. We go to the nations. And then they're in alphabetical order, I believe. So you have to find the right one. Let's see if we can find it. Probably at the bottom, right? Greenland. St. Martin, St. Bob, Turks and Caicos. So you have all, there it is, United States. As I said, 206, that's the United States. Then it has this US, use hard-coded ML player origins, and this is the USA. The USA is the only country that in the world XML file that has this value, and it's 1 to indicate that is the United States. because the game requires a United States. It requires like basically, I guess, a homeland for baseball. So you have the United States and the short name and the pop, and again, the ethnic ID, which is modern US 0. We saw that already. The capital ID, so that's the ID number for Washington, D.C. is 87845. So if you wanted to make a player be from Washington, D.C., if we jump back to our Excel spreadsheet here, and let's say we wanted to make, 87845. Now if I save this, and then I go back to OOTP, and I import it, and go back to their roster and look at Bob Faulkner. He's now from Washington, D.C. So you get the idea, I believe, and I don't want to beat this into the ground, but this is how you edit. And this is what you have to do if you're going to do what I do to kind of tailor this stuff to fit. And I don't typically do it this way beyond the initial setup, because in the initial setup, I will go in and I will do this. Once you get into the actual gameplay and stuff, things are a little bit more involved. And there are ways to actually update your world file and so on while you're already playing the game. So, if you come in here and we go back to setup, under database, you have database tools. Here you have re-import world database from XML file, or re-import name and ethnicity database. So if you've made changes, right? Because it might be worthwhile to go in if you have a lot of time, I guess. See, brief digression here. You can choose to edit everything up front, which is a big time investment, but it reduces the need to do it kind of progressively as you're moving through history in your league. Or you can do it progressively as you move through history in your league, which ultimately will probably take much more time, but your time investment per instance is lower. So it's kind of, do you want to have a ton of setup time, or do you want to have a moderate amount of maintenance time as you progress through history? I've used both. It depends on how quickly I'm trying to spin something up. I've run a lot of leagues in my time in OOTP. As I said, in the first video, I've been playing this since the first version of the game. I've been tinkering with it since day one, basically. As soon as it was able to be tinkered with, I tinkered with it. And so I've done a lot of things, and things have changed a great deal over time. There were no XML files. Back in the day, the name files was just a list of names, and it was a comma delimited file, and that was dead easy to edit. The format now is much more difficult. I shouldn't say much more difficult. It's more complicated, because it's not just a straight CSV file where it was literally like a name and a name, comma, number, comma, number, where one number was the name set or the ethnicity. So like for the modern US, it would be like Al, comma 0, meaning it's from the modern US, and then comma 1500, indicating how often it appears. And, some names like Jim or John would have a big number, and names like Ezekiel would have a really small number because they were less common. Or maybe not a real small number, but a smaller number. So that's how you determine the population and the likelihood that name would pop up. Because all this stuff, when the game spins up a new player, it's going to randomly draw a name for him, first name, last name, based on the ethnicity, and so on. So, and it's tailored for the modern world. So you're going to get names in this. I set my league in 1871, but the name files that it's using are going to be name files from 2023. And the populations it's using to determine where these guys come from is from 2023. Both of those things can be edited, but that involves an investment of time. So again, I say you do it all up front, which I did not do this time, or you do it progressively as you go along, which is what I'm planning to do. So what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to show you this because it's boring and takes a decent amount of time, is I'm going to generate a list of cities, and I'm going to actually use ChatGPT to do it. So if you have an account there, you can do the same thing I do, where you can ask it, give me the top 10 or top 50 or whatever. If you go beyond 50, it gets a little sketchy and starts skipping and not. I mean, that thing has its issues. It's AI, but it's not completely. It's still a computer program, right? So if you go say, give me the top 50 cities in New Jersey as of the 1870 U.S. Census, it will do that. And then you can take those cities and in Excel make a list and then cross-reference them via lookup. And I'm probably going above some people's heads here, but you can use what's called a lookup to compare it to the values in the XML file. It's a little bit complicated. I understand that. That's how I'm thinking I'll do it. And we'll see if I actually pull that off or if I ultimately just end up saying, screw it, I'm going to edit the world XML file and the names XML file. Because I can. I just really don't want to because I'm feeling kind of lazy, I guess, ultimately. So this has turned into more of a discussion of what you do and how you can do it and your options to do so than it was showing you how I do it. But that's basically how I do it. So typically it involves editing this file. And again, see now the nicknames all came back because I didn't save the last one. So I come in here and just delete them. And now if I save this. And so now if I wanted to change somebody's name to show you what I was talking about, if we go back to our XML file here. Why did that not work? There it is. Okay. So if you come in here and you drill down into states, right? The first state it has is New York. I think it was it kind of based it on population maybe or something. I don't know. But New York is first for some reason, right? So, and then you go into the cities, right? So you have Airmont. So if I wanted to make him from Airmont, I know 680 is Airmont. So I go out of here and I come in here and let's just make him 680. So he's from Airmont now. Joe Hawkins is going to be from, and maybe I want to make him the Airmont Hawk will be his nickname, right? So again, save it. Go back to OOTP. Go back to league settings, functions, import rosters. Select your file, import, done. Now let's find him via search. Joe Hawkins. Joe the Airmont Hawk Hawkins, and he's from Airmont, New York. That's it. That's how you do it. Again, searching through that XML notepad, not the best way to do it. If we open this file up in something else, like let's open it up in Notepad++, or plus. I keep saying too many pluses there. So if we open it up here, it's going to take a while because it's a big file. But it will eventually open. There it is. Okay, so this is what the raw text looks like. So right up front, you have all your ethnicity, so you can see what each ethnicity is. So when you're looking at a name and you see what, or city or whatever, or country, it'll tell you what the ethnicity is for that, right? So if you wanted to know what Czech is in the game, it's ethnicity number 14, right? So then you can come in here and you can actually collapse some continents. So let's collapse continents 1, 2, 3. We'll just go with 4 because that's the one we're interested in. Then we're going to collapse some of these other nations because we know we want 206. Maybe we leave Canada open, right? So let's leave Canada open, and here's Canada. So let's say we want somebody to be from Canada. Okay, Canada's nation ID is 36. And let's find a city in Ontario, and let's just go with Englehart, 23699. And what did I say? The ethnicity, the nation ID is 36, right? So we come back to Excel, and let's change him to 36. Can leave this alone because it ignores it. And then what was that number? I keep forgetting because I wasn't really paying attention. It is 23699. You can also double click and hit copy. And then go in here and just paste it. And now hit save. And again, we go to here. We go back to setup. We import. And then if we go back to the Red Stockings roster, I don't even remember what player that was. There he was. Brian Lambert. Nope, not Brian Lambert. Eric Johnson from Englehart, Ontario, and he's Canadian now. So this is what you do, right? And you can do it in game too. So if we went in here and we wanted to change his name to Ed Johnson and make him be from London, Ontario, easily done. If we wanted to make him, I don't know, English and say he's from Cambridge, England. Now he's English. Same thing, right? So that's how you can do it. You can do it internally. See, it's easier kind of to find the cities if you just type them in here. So you pick the country first. So let's go to Brad Huffaker here. And let's say his name, I don't like Brad for the error. So he's Bill Huffaker. And let's make him be from Buffalo, New York. And then we can give him the nickname Buffalo Bill, right? Real original. And whenever you change a field in here, you have to hit enter or it doesn't stick. So if I went back in here and I said I'm going to make his name Andy and I don't hit enter, he's still Bill. So you have to remember that. Always hit enter if you do it in game. So that's kind of the gist of this. I'm going to actually do a lot of this off air. I'm not going to bore you guys by going through everything. There are a lot of names in here that I'm going to change. Like this guy, I've got nothing against Jarib Arusi. He's Israeli, but he doesn't fit in an 1871 United States-based professional baseball league. So he's going to become, I don't know, Jack Aarons or something. We'll see. I don't know. But that's how I'm going to do it. I actually have my own little spreadsheet I made up that will generate names for me, and I might use that, to be honest, as far as the names. I might even do something like that for cities. Who knows? Maybe at some point I'll actually post those for people to use. We'll see how things go. So like I said, for now I'm going to sign off. I wanted to just give you guys kind of an overview of how I do my editing here. And there's a lot that still needs to be fixed. I'm going to show you how I do the uniforms and the logos and all kinds of stuff as I set this up for our first season. Then once we start playing, I'll update each season, show you kind of what happened that season. We'll talk about some stuff maybe, and then what I need to do when I progress to the next season. That way you get an idea so that if you want to do something like this as a solo game for yourself where you can build some kind of league and it can be anything you want. I'm just electing to go with 19th century. There's all kinds of things to deal with. We have to deal with the schedule. We have to deal with, because we're basing it on history, as far as what happened in, major league history here. We have to deal with teams that folded, teams that didn't finish their schedule, and things like that. I'm not going to worry about trades. These players are fake. So it doesn't matter if a guy gets traded or not gets traded, or doesn't get traded. There wasn't a lot of trading going on back then either. There was contract jumping, but there wasn't a lot of trading by the organization. At this point in time, the players were pretty much in control of everything, which is kind of why it kind of got out of hand and why they ended up putting it more into a club situation, and the owners or backers of the clubs kind of claimed all the power. Started, they were the money men. They owned the club. They controlled everything. They brought in the reserve clause that tied the player to the club in perpetuity, which wasn't really fair to the players, obviously. And then, until Curt Flood came along, that's just how it worked. And then you have free agency, and now we know what that's like now. But back then, this was freewheeling days. Then the owners came in, locked it all down, had it that way for 70 years or so, 80 years, and then free agency came in and the power has shifted somewhat to the player side. So that's going to do it for now. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to comment. Let me know what you think. If you have something you're wondering how to do that's pertinent to this discussion, let me know. I'll try to answer you. Please consider liking the video and not disliking the video. I did get a dislike, and it was for a reason that I don't particularly agree with, so let's just put it that way. consider sharing it, spread the word. The more eyeballs on it, the better. All of this is somewhat positive feedback to me to keep me doing this. If I feel like this becomes a waste of my time, I will stop. That's just how it is. I enjoy doing it, but I can do it on my own without talking about it and accomplish it much quicker. So give me some positive reinforcement if you would. I would appreciate it. And ultimately, if you're interested in this, please consider subscribing. That's the ultimate form of encouragement for me, and it helps my channel grow. So all of that is much appreciated. But even if you just want to drop a comment and say, hey, can you talk about this, or this was unclear, or whatever it may be, I'm happy to interact. But for now, that's going to do it. My name's Joe. This has been the sports edition of Hexed Encountered. And until next time, happy gaming.